We currently know very little about Pokemon Legends ZA, but we can assume some things may return from the blueprint that Pokemon Legends Arceus created. First and foremost in many fans' minds is what the starter Pokemon will be for this game, and what regional forms they may have. Though some theorize we'll get Mega forms for the starters instead. But for the sake of this video, we're going to talk about what potential regional forms could look like. And actually, I'm going to be talking about 2 sets of starters that I created regional forms for, based on a little theory I had, which I'll talk more about later. For now, why don't you hit that subscribe button, leave a like or a comment down below if you're excited for Pokemon Legends ZA. But let's go ahead and get to our first group of starters. Many have theorized that Snivy and Piplup will be the grass and water starters due to the heavy French influence in the design of their final stages. So starting off our first regional trio, we have Snivy, which eventually evolves into Colossal Serperior, the Thief Pokemon, a grass dark type that I worked with Trevenart to create. I realized this would make 2 Unova starters with a Dark-type regional form, and did I absolutely consider making a Dark-type Emboar to complete the trio? Yeah, but there's a really solid reason for its Dark typing, so just hear me out. Colossal Serperior keeps its French influence but adds in another French icon, Arsène Lupin, the famous gentleman thief created by writer Maurice Leblanc. Bet you never saw that coming. Much the same as Arsène, Colossal Serperior is a suave intellectual thief that uses deceit and its long slithering body to steal what it wants. Playing into the common term for smooth-talking villains, snakes. The small changes to this Pokemon's design really make it for me. Giving it a little leaf that arches over its head like Lupin's top hat, its tail that curls to emulate his cane, and changing the pattern on its body to look more like his gentlemanly clothes. Its new signature move is Barbed Cane, a base 65 Dark-type move in which it hits its thorny tail against the opponent. This move has an increased critical hit chance and will drain 20% of the damage dealt. Is this just a slightly altered version of Ceaseless Edge? Yes. Am I ashamed of that? Nope. And you shouldn't be ashamed to hit that join button and help support this channel. Your contribution through membership directly goes into paying the artists I work with to create these wonderful Fakemon. Magicians and up can see videos early, and the new Art Mage tier pays for 1 design a month that you can get a high quality image of and credited for in a video. So make sure to hit that join button if you can and help support this channel. It's very much appreciated. Next of the trio, we're going slightly out of order with our water starter Piplup, which eventually becomes Colossal Empoleon, the commander Pokemon, a water fighting type that I also worked with Trevin on. Swapping defense for offense, Colossal Empoleon is a strategic fighter that uses its powerful and sharp wings to not only slice its opponents, but can use them defensively to parry oncoming attacks, much like a sword can be used defensively in certain situations. Its signature move, Disarming Strike, always goes first. It is a 60 base power fighting type move that lowers the target's attack if they use an attacking move that turn. This version of Empoleon swaps what French military leader it is based on. Instead of Napoleon Bonaparte, this regional form is based on Brennus, chieftain of the Gaulish tribe the Senones, who took down many Romans and even captured Rome for a short time. While we just had a water fighting type starter with Quaquaval, it is not unheard of for type combos to repeat after only a generation. Looking at you, Blaziken, Infernape, Emboar, Hisuian Typhlosion, and Skeledirge. Speaking of fire starters, I put it in this position on purpose because this one is a bit up in the air as to what people commonly think it will be. Many have said Scorbunny because, you know, soccer is super widespread across most of Europe and would fit. But I want to throw another contender in the ring. One that might be a bit controversial. Charmander. While this would give us yet another Charizard form in the region that already gave us 2 new forms for it, I think y'all underestimate how much Game Freak and the general public loves this Pokemon and wants to see more of it. Any chance to make new merch and nostalgia bait? Anyway, Charmander would eventually evolve into Colossal Charizard, the magic Pokemon, a fire psychic type, also by Trevin. That's right, it's Charwizard now. That Charizard is widowy hitting the gwitty. I thought the idea of Charizard getting a form that semi-reflects the original Firestarter of Kalos would be a nice tie-in. Plus, the origin of this design was too good to pass up. This form is based on Drak, an evil spellcaster dragon that lurked in the River of Rhone, and was said to be a great shapeshifter. Given Charizard has so many forms at this point, including this one, a shapeshifting dragon felt appropriate as a design origin. Colossal Charizard's new signature move, Spellbind, is a base 65 special type move that gives the target the bound status condition, making them take damage at the end of each turn and unable to swap out. The final stages of the Hisuian starters had a kind of group theme inspired by Ainu and Japanese culture, so I very much wanted these 3 starters to have their own group theme inspired by French culture or mythology. So these 3 are inspired by Essus, Totatus, and Tyrannus, 3 Celtic gods that happen to be worshipped by the Gauls, the ancient inhabitants of much of France, Belgium, and Luxembourg. Essus was known as a lord or master depicted cutting down a tree, Totatus was known as the god of the people, with sacrifices to him usually being drowned as an offering, and Tyrannus was known as the Thunderer, which will make more sense in a minute. Totatus and Tyrannus have both been associated with Roman gods, Mercury and Mars for Totatus, and Jupiter for Tyrannus. Mercury was a god of commerce, communication, thieves, and trickery. So for the sake of this video, I decided to scooch that inspiration onto Serperior. Mars is a well-known god of war, which lines up well with our military leader-inspired Empoleon, also with Empoleon originally being based on Poseidon, shifting it to Ares' Roman counterpart feels like a natural transition, with the trident of Poseidon turning into the helmet of Mars. Jupiter is the king of gods in the Roman pantheon, along with being a god of thunder and the sky. With Tyrannus also being a thunderer, I considered making this form an electric type, but ultimately decided the psychic type made more sense and kept with the secondary type triangle. Also, Jupiter is depicted as a wise old king in some incarnations, so that aligns well with the psychic type. If you think the electric type fits more in this design, honestly, it could go either way, and you can even see some lightning elements to its design as a reference to these gods' thundering nature. So before we get into the second set of starters, I have to explain my theory. From the little information we were given in the teaser trailer for Legends ZA, we can glean a few things. One, that there's some kind of reconstruction project going on. Two, is that we have these images that look like a past sketch of Lumiose City. And three, there are other images of what looks like the layout of modern-day Lumiose. So my theory is that this reconstruction project will have you time traveling between the past and the present to see how the changes you make in the past affect the modern day. And for that, you could be given two sets of starters, one for the past and one for the present. I mean, this wouldn't even be the first time we were given a second choice of starter Pokemon in the Kalos region, so the idea isn't too far-fetched. And it wouldn't quite make sense to have regional forms in present-day Kalos that already existed in Gen 6, as they canonically exist without said forms. I don't know if you noticed, but all the Pokemon for the past set of starters came before Gen 6, so naturally all the present-day starters would be after Gen 6. So with that said, my picks for the three present-day starters would be Grookey, Fuecoco, and Popplio. Starting with Grookey, it would eventually evolve into Kalosian Rillaboom, the Shepherd Pokemon, a grass steel type that I worked with Fungusmon on. This form of Rillaboom is based on a hairy creature from Bosque mythology called the Bazajuan, also known as the Lord of the Woods. They are said to have brought agriculture and ironworking to humans, which is perfect for a grass steel type. They were also said to protect fields of livestock, which is where Kalosian Rillaboom gets its category as the Shepherd Pokemon, protecting many of the livestock-themed Pokemon such as Wooloo, Mareep, Miltank, and Tauros. They use the drum at the tip of their staff to call and drive these Pokemon to different locations. The steel typing also still works in the drum aspect of Rillaboom's original design, while slightly shifting the inspiration to two different kinds of drums. The steel pan, which originates from Trinidad and Tobago, that have some French influences in their culture due to early settlers, and the pahu, a drum coming from Polynesian culture. Its signature move would be Shepherd's Call, a base 70 steel-type move in which it uses its drum to call a stampede of Pokemon trampling the opponent. After that, we have Fuecoco, which eventually becomes Kalosian Skeledirge, the player Pokemon, a fire fairy type that I also worked with Fungus on. This Skeledirge is much less vocal than its Paldean counterpart, and prefers to make music using the reverberation of its shell, that is strummed by its little fairy-like companion, which I imagine instead of extending out like a microphone, would instead become a little violin bow. As yes, this has a definite violin or stringed instrument inspiration, but the shell aspect also comes from another French mythological creature, the Tarrasque, a creature with a lion's face, a turtle shell-like carapace, and the tail of a serpent, which may have been a medieval interpretation of a crocodile. This very mystical creature, along with the vibe of a violin or viola, felt very in line with the fairy type to me. Its new signature move would be Charming Melody, which basically acts as a fairy-type version of Torch Song, and the animation for it would be like I described earlier with the Fairy Companion, which was most definitely inspired by the fairies from the Legend of Zelda franchise. Then there is Popplio, which eventually becomes Kalosian Primarina, the Resounding Pokemon, a water dragon type that Fungus also did. This Primarina branches off a bit from its mermaid inspiration, being based on a distant French cousin, the Melusine, a water spirit that is half woman, half serpent, that is one of those classic tales of a woman with a curse. She would take this form on Saturdays, and if her husband were to see her, she would take that form permanently. Spoiler alert, he sees her, so she does. The coral in its hair come together to look like boha pipes, a form of bagpipe native to the lands of Gascony in southwestern France. Though this Pokemon looks sweet and kind, it can summon its signature move Draconic Bellow, a base 80 special dragon-type move that drops the attack of any target on the field, including allies. For the group theme of these Pokemon, Well, you can no doubt tell they were already very musical originally, and now they had their type of music change slightly. But they are all also inspired by the songs of the troubadours from French folklore. Rillaboom is based on a pastorella, which were songs about trying to win the affection of a shepherdess. Skeledirge is based on conso, songs about courtly love. And Primarina is based on alba, songs about lovers parting, just like the Melusine had to be parted from her love to try to avoid her draconic form. And the themes don't stop there. These two groups of starters have a theme in and of themselves. The past starters have themes and designs that are slightly darker in origin. Thieving, war, spellcasting, which are reminiscent of death, aka the legendary Pokemon Yveltal. Meanwhile, the present-day starters are more jovial, having themes surrounding love and life, much like the legendary Pokemon Xerneas. So these two groups are themed after the legends of the original Kalos games. And those are what some potential starter regional forms could look like. Thank you so much to our wonderful members that you can see on screen now for supporting the channel with their hard-earned money, which you can also do by hitting that join button. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.